the dark night of the soul and forgiving yourself. So, I've talked about the significance of forgiveness when you are going through an existential crisis, and today I'd like to continue with this topic, but in a slightly different context. And I've already mentioned that forgiveness is a huge one when you are going through the dark night of the soul. And when it comes to forgiving yourself, from my experience, it's inevitable, because when you are going through the dark night of the soul, one of the things that you will experience is the realization that many or some of your previous life choices, some past habits, behaviors, priorities perhaps, didn't really work to your benefit, didn't really work in your favor, and actually some of them worked to your detriment. Some of them worked against you. And that is not to say that we are not allowed to make mistakes, because life is also about experimentation and basically learning by doing. But the thing is that we will still need to mourn or grieve some life decisions that we made. And let me give you an example. So in our culture, in our Western culture, very often there is this tendency, especially when we are young, when we are students, that we experiment with many different things. So for example, we may choose to party like crazy, go out every single night or every other night, and make some choices that are not the best, so to speak. So we may drink too much, we may enter relationships that are not very good for us. And that is not to say that there is something fundamentally wrong with that, although as soon as you discover that it's not good for you, I would suggest fixing it as soon as possible. But basically, sometimes we just go through that period, and at some point we may decide that it's not working for us anymore, which is probably a good thing, but it doesn't change the fact that at some point you may realize, oh my God, what did I do? How could I treat myself this way? How could I do it to myself? And also, how could I do it to other people? For example, the ones I was in a relationship with, or I was, just goofing around. And when you realize that even the way you were treating your body like a disco, because, when we're students, some of us tend to party hard, right? And we tend to have a lot of fun as well. So that is not to say that, again, there is something fundamentally wrong with that. But again, when you realize that maybe you overstepped the mark, maybe you just exaggerated in a way, it can be very painful. And you may start to feel a lot of compassion for the younger you. For the younger you that now you see as somebody who was actually abused by yourself. And I believe that it may be one of the most difficult moments when we're in the middle of the dark night of the soul. But at the same time, if you think about it, it's just so beautiful. It's so healing when you can feel the younger you from this perspective, from the perspective of a much mature adult. And when you realize that, just feel the feelings, I would say. Just, mourn, grieve, write a letter to yourself. Just breathe into it. I think it's so crucial to embrace this experience and also to accept it. Like, yes, this is what I did. And, my best thinking got me there. I think it's very powerful to realize that actually we did it out of love because we wanted to have fun. We wanted to have adventure, to experience adventure. We wanted to be liked by other people. We just wanted the best for ourselves. And again, we just didn't know any better. So I do believe that forgiving yourself is such a huge part of it. And there are other areas when it comes to that. You may realize that you were in many relationships where you used another person, where you wanted to be cherished and, celebrated, but you didn't really pay attention to another human being, and you may realize that you used them in a way. You may also realize that you made some business decisions that actually used other people. You treated people in an instrumental way. And now that you see that every single thing, every single being that you see is, another part of you, because that's also the realization that we get when we are going through the dark night of the soul, that we are connected with everything. And if I hurt you, I actually hurt myself. This is, incredible. This is so powerful. But the realization that the reality may work in a completely different way than we thought it did can be a very painful one. It's like, being in the labor. The new you is being born. The new you that perceives the world in a different way. Some people call it that we are approaching or we're coming closer to the so-called Christ consciousness. But it doesn't really matter how we call it, but I would say that compassion and forgiveness are very huge when it comes to the dark night of the soul. And the resurrection is the effect of it. Because when we realize how we were putting ourselves on a cross in a way, I just like, using analogies, because at some point I realized this is how it felt, that I was actually crucifying myself. I was giving myself pain by some life decisions, and even the ones that seemed, like fun, because, everybody did it, but the fact that everybody does something doesn't make it right. And the fact that no one may do something, well, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that, because sometimes it's the other way around. But anyway, so I would encourage you to think about it, about some life situations or about some areas in your life where you may have abused yourself, or others, because that's also important. Just, think about it. And, sometimes it may be easier or more profound to come up with one specific situation, the one that seems to be most significant to you. Because the truth is that if you forgive something or someone or yourself from the bottom of your heart, that choosing that one single thing and basically just feeling it deep in your being and moving through it will heal everything else. So basically, I'm not going to suggest anything, but in general, there are two approaches. You can come up with a list of things where you abused yourself or others, or you can come up with one big, let's say, life situation or a circumstance, and just open yourself up to forgiveness. Open yourself up to forgiving yourself. The fact that you did things that didn't really feel right, the fact that you may have abused your body, your emotionality and so on, well, doesn't mean that you were a bad person. Probably remember the film with, I don't remember the title, but it was with Robin Williams and Matt Damon. Damon? Well, I don't remember. But basically, there was this fragment, there was this part in which he said, "It's not your fault." I encourage you, to look it up online, because it's very powerful as well. And I remember that it made me cry. It's not your fault. It's no one's fault. But that doesn't mean that you're not required to repent, to cry for yourself in a way, to embrace that younger you, maybe the little one, because also there is so much compassion that can come up for us as children, for the pain that we experience as children. But basically, when we are children, very often we experienced abuse from other people. But let's say when we were teenagers or a bit older, when we are already adults and we are able to make decisions independently, and when we are able to protect ourselves in a way, this is when guilt may set in, because like I was an adult at that point and I was able to make different decisions. But the question is, were you really, like knowing what you knew, and again, as I said, your best thinking got you there. So I truly believe that forgiving yourself can be something that can change the trajectory of the dark night of the soul in your life. And it may not happen overnight, although I do believe everything is possible, but usually real processes take time, because your body, your mind, your heart, soul, they just need time to integrate that. And that's okay, because if it's just like too much, it can be more painful than necessary. So just play with this idea, or maybe not even play with this idea, but just like embrace this idea. Think about where you can forgive yourself, if need be, apologize, because there may be some people that you may have to, or you may want to apologize to, maybe in person, or maybe you can write a letter. Just think about what feels right for you, or feel about what things right for you, because the idea is to name it, to embrace it, to accept it, to repent, like from the bottom of your heart. So you do realize, like where your behavior was not the best, was not optimal, to realize what you did wrong in a way, but let's put it this way, and then just move through all the emotions. And at the end of the day, when you do this exercise, when you spend some time on the topic of forgiveness, and let's say you write a letter, then you can just get rid of that letter or whatever that is, so that it's your yes to saying goodbye to that version of you, that was maybe destructive, that didn't have a good impact on her or himself, or on the other people around you. And that's why you do it for, not to condone bad behavior, but to accept it, to see it for what it was, and to say goodbye to it. Okay, now I do realize that I didn't do the best thing, that I worked to my detriment, I worked to the detriment of others. It wasn't right, I can see it. I know that I didn't know any better, so I forgive myself, and I love myself for what I did. But now that I understand the problem, or I understand where I didn't have enough information, I choose not to do it anymore. It's my decision to be more conscious about it. And I think that's the power of transformation, that's the power of alchemy. And forgiving yourself and acceptance is just so huge. And again, it's not condoning, like anything wrong, or condoning bad behavior, or even saying yes to the past that didn't serve you. It's quite the contrary. Acceptance is about saying goodbye to that part of you, so that you don't overly think about it, so that it's not like unnamed somewhere in the darkest corners of your mind and your being. That's why you accept it. That's you just bring it to the light. I'm not talking about anything new, but sometimes it needs to be resaid, so to speak, so that like it better sinks in. And that's what I did as well. I read about forgiveness. I was listening to YouTube podcasts about forgiveness, because sometimes when I heard it from many different people, it just finally clicked in a way. And that is not to say that I'm done with the whole process, because time will tell, and life will definitely show me where I am with that. And I think that I feel that it's still being completed in a way, but yeah, it's just very important to forgive yourself, and and love yourself for what you did, for what you're doing right now, because the fact that you're considering this topic, the fact that you're willing to forgive yourself, it's just such a huge and beautiful act of self-love. And, you know, what could be better? Because if you truly love yourself, you love everything else, because you realize that everything else that you see that seems to be in the outside world, well, it's not something separate. Whatever you see is you. So yes, forgive yourself, be gentle with yourself, love yourself, and know yourself, know thyself, because forgiveness is something that will also allow you to see who you are, to see the beautiful being, the divine being that you are. And it's all so beautiful, isn't it? Okay, I think that I will stop here. As usual, feel free to share your experience and, well, whatever you feel like sharing. So I wish you all the best, and until next time.